My name is Elena Carter. I am 30 years old. When I was 22, my parents sat across from me at a polished oak dining table and calmly explained that the $78,000 my grandfather had left specifically for my medical school tuition would be temporarily redirected to save my younger brother's failing startup. My mother smiled like she was offering me a life lesson, not taking my future. "You've always been resilient," she said softly. "You'll figure it out." My father didn't even look up from his glass. "Your brother is on the edge. This is different." I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I said, "Okay." Then I stood up, hugged my mother, thanked them for dinner, and walked upstairs like nothing had just shifted permanently inside me. At 9:12 p.m., my phone vibrated. Security alert. Failed login attempt. Incorrect password. Device: MacBook Pro. Location: our home office downstairs. My father was already trying to move the money. But here's what they didn't know. 6 weeks earlier, the moment I turned 22 and the trust legally transferred into my sole ownership, I had already moved every cent, legally, cleanly, irrevocably, into a new, protected account under my exclusive control, and I had locked every possible door behind me. Before I explain exactly how I did that, and how I later uncovered that my parents had quietly withdrawn over $11,200 from that fund over the years without my knowledge, let me ask you something. If you've ever been the reliable one, the child who gets told you'll be fine while everything gets taken from you, just think about that for a second. Because what happened next didn't just change my relationship with my family. It rewrote who I was. It was Thursday, October 3rd, 2018. I remember the exact date because I had just finished my second week of pre-med coursework at NYU, exhausted, running on caffeine and discipline, trying to build a life that had always been presented to me as possible but never truly supported. That morning, my mother had called. Her tone was unusually gentle. "Can you come home tonight? We want to have dinner together. Your brother will be here too." I should have known. But hope has a strange way of disguising patterns as exceptions. I drove 2 hours from Manhattan back to our house in Westchester, the same route I had taken 100 times growing up. But this time, every mile felt like a countdown. The black folder already sat on the passenger seat beside me, heavy with paper and proof. 4 weeks earlier, my father had sent a message. "We all need to make sacrifices for the family." That was the moment I stopped trusting intentions and started documenting actions. Dinner started at 7:04 p.m. Everything was too normal. My mother made roasted chicken, my brother's favorite, not mine. My father asked me about school in that distant, polite way he used when he wasn't actually interested in the answer. My brother, Daniel, avoided eye contact entirely. At 7:26, I noticed his watch was gone, the expensive one he'd bought after his business took off. At 7:41, my father placed his fork down carefully. My mother reached for Daniel's hand. And then it came. "Elena," my father began, voice measured. "Your brother's company is in trouble. Investors pulled out. He has obligations he can't meet." A pause. "We've decided to use your education fund to stabilize things." Not asked. Decided. $78,000. My grandfather's money. For my future. Redirected. My mother leaned forward quickly, filling the silence with rehearsed softness. "You're strong, Elena. You always have been. Medical school. There are loans, scholarships, options. But Daniel, he doesn't have that safety net right now." Daniel finally spoke, barely above a whisper. "I'll pay it back. I swear. I just need time." I looked at him. Really looked, and all I saw was history repeating itself. When I was 10, Daniel crashed his car. $4,900 from family reserves. When I was 15, he dropped out of college after one semester. $12,300 gone. When I was 18, they funded his next business idea. $20,000. Every time, the same sentence followed. "Elena will be okay." So I stood up. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I said one word. "Okay." They were confused. Deathly relieved. Unprepared for compliance. My mother hugged me tightly. "Thank you for understanding." I hugged her back. "Of course. And I meant it, because understanding doesn't mean agreeing. At 9:12 p.m., the first alert hit. Failed login. Then another. And another. I could hear my father downstairs, the sharp tapping of keys turning into frustrated pauses. The password's not working, he muttered. Silence. Then louder. It's locked. My mother's voice, uneasy now. Maybe Elena changed something? 5 seconds of quiet. Then my name. Elena, come downstairs. I walked down slowly. Calmly. When I entered the room, the computer screen glowed cold blue. Access denied. My father turned to me. What did you do? I tilted my head slightly. I don't understand the question. The account. It's locked. I updated the credentials 6 weeks ago on my birthday. You can't just... I turned 22, Dad. Under the terms of grandfather's grant, the fund fully transferred into my control. I closed the old joint access and moved the remaining balance. Silence. I placed the black folder on the table. Opened it. Carefully. Inside, the original notarized gift letter, legal transfer confirmations, my sole account ownership documentation, and the printed legal statutes. Every page clean. Every line undeniable. My mother whispered, "You planned this." I met her eyes. No. I prepared. But I didn't tell them everything that night. I didn't tell them about the audit I had run a week prior. I didn't mention the transaction history. I stayed silent about the $11,200. Not yet, because the truth is, this didn't start that evening. It started years earlier. With small things, patterns, moments that didn't feel right but were easy to dismiss until they weren't. At 19, after starting college, I requested partial statements out of curiosity. At 21, I demanded full historical records. By the time I turned 22, I had read everything. There were hidden withdrawals. My parents had taken advantage of their status as temporary custodians before my legal age of transition. 2015, $4,900. 2016, $3,100. 2017, $3,200. Every withdrawal was masked with false memos. Beneficiary medical expense, educational support, transportation. None of it was for me. One archived email between my father and the bank stood out vividly. My father had asked if the funds could be used for broader family stability. The bank's reply was rigid. No, funds must directly and exclusively benefit the beneficiary. My father responded, understood. Then he withdrew the money anyway. That was the moment something inside me burned out permanently. Not anger, not even betrayal. Clarity. So when they sat me down at that dinner table, they thought they were making a decision about my future. What they didn't realize is that I had already made mine. I didn't go home again for 3 months. I worked, studied, built everything from the ground up. No safety net, no backup plan. Just structure, discipline, and distance. Years passed. I finished medical school, not because they helped, but because they didn't. I stopped being the person who adapted to other people's decisions. I became the person who made my own. And then, years later, my father asked to meet in person. A short, direct text. We need to talk. I knew it wasn't an attempt to repair anything. It was an effort to regain control, to reestablish the hierarchy where decisions were made by them, and I merely absorbed the consequences. We met at the same house, same kitchen, same table. But the dynamic had shifted in a way that no one could ignore. This time, I didn't walk in hoping to be heard. I walked in prepared to be undeniable. My father started immediately. You've created a very difficult situation for this family. I nodded once, calmly. No. I stepped out of one. His expression tightened, the familiar frustration surfacing. That money was meant for the family. I slowly took the black folder out of my bag. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Just deliberate. No, I said evenly. It was used like it belonged to you. I opened the statements. The highlighted lines. The dates, the amounts, and the descriptions of their fabrications from 2015 to 2017. My mother's hand moved to her mouth in horror. Elena, we always meant to put it back. I turned the page, revealing the printed email correspondence with the bank. You asked if you could spend this money on other things, I said, looking my father straight in the eyes. They told you no. And you did it anyway. For the first time, he didn't look angry. He looked exposed. We were going to replace it, he said quietly. I tilted my head slightly. When? The silence that followed was absolute and empty. No excuses, no emotions. Because the truth didn't need words. There had never been a plan to return it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I simply stated facts, and that was what made it impossible to dismiss. My mother started crying quietly, not the manipulative crying meant to sway a room, but something smaller, more genuine, as if she were finally seeing the pattern from the outside. We didn't realize it would hurt you this way, she whispered. I looked at her steadily. You didn't realize, because you didn't consider me. That was the moment the conversation stopped being about money. Because it never really was. It was about a system. A hierarchy that had always placed me last under the assumption that I would absorb it because I was strong. My brother hadn't spoken the entire time. He sat there, staring at the floor, until finally he muttered, I didn't know the fund was entirely yours. I looked at him. You never asked. He nodded slowly. That too was true. After that, there was nothing left to say. No sudden catharsis. No dramatic apologies that could fix the past. Just silence. And a massive distance. I left without looking back. This time, I didn't feel hurt. Only clarity. The last time I saw my father was in the autumn of 2025. It was not dramatic. There was no raised voice, no slammed doors, no final argument designed to feel like closure. Just a quiet cafe, neutral walls, and two people sitting across from each other, one trying to fix something that had already passed the point of repair, and the other no longer needing it to be fixed. He looked older, not just gray hair or lines around his eyes, but internally. The absolute, authoritative certainty that used to dictate our family had entirely vanished. He looked like a man who had lost his footing. I've been thinking a lot, he said slowly, his hands resting on the table, fingers tense. About everything you showed us, everything we didn't see at the time. I didn't interrupt. Not because I was waiting for something meaningful, but because I no longer needed to control how the end of this story unfolded. We thought we were doing what was necessary, he continued. For the family, for stability. I nodded once. I know. That calm answer surprised him. He expected resistance, tears, or some form of emotional reaction to latch onto. But there was none. And you don't think our intentions matter? He asked, leaning forward slightly. I think intentions don't erase betrayal, I said calmly. And they don't undo consequences. For the first time, our conversation was completely honest. For years, every interaction was layered with scripts, what I was supposed to feel, what role I was supposed to play to maintain the illusion of a perfect family. Now, the curtains had fallen. I want to make it right, he said finally. Years ago, that sentence would have meant everything to me. I had waited for it for a lifetime without even realizing it. But now, it landed like a foreign word. I looked at him, without a hint of malice, just absolute clarity. You can't make it right, he frowned slightly. Why not? Because this is the part people don't understand. They think repair is about compensation. They think you can just patch up the visible damage, but some things break in a way that permanently alters how you view everything that came before it. Because it wasn't one mistake, I said. It was years of them. It was every time you assumed, Elena will be fine, instead of asking how I actually was. It was every time something was taken without a conversation. Every time I became an instrument to solve problems instead of a person. And the hardest part? It worked. For a very long time. Because I allowed it. I carried it on my back. Until I simply stopped. My father remained silent. So what happens now? He asked quietly. He was still waiting for a compromise, a loophole, where we could adjust the roles and move forward together. But life doesn't always offer a second chance. Now? I repeated. I leaned back slightly, my voice steady. Now we live with what is. I'm not angry anymore, Dad. I'm not holding on to this grudge, and I'm not carrying the weight forward. I built my life without you, but that doesn't mean I go back. And that was the line. Clear and final. For the first time, he didn't argue, reframe it, or try to negotiate. He just nodded slowly. Deep down, he understood what most people take too long to accept. Some relationships don't end with an explosion, but with silence and clarity. We sat there for a few more minutes, not speaking. Not because there was tension, but because there was truly nothing left that needed to be said. When I stood up to leave, he did too. For a second, it looked like he might reach out for a handshake or a final gesture, but he stopped himself, and so did I. Not every ending needs a ritual embrace to validate it. I walked out into the cool evening air, the sky turning a deep, rich blue just before the night took over entirely. I stopped and just breathed. No weight. No pressure. No expectations waiting for me on the other side of a family dinner. Just endless space. And in that space, something settled in a way it never had before. It wasn't victory or revenge or the glossy forgiveness people like to write about. It was ownership. Total ownership of my own life. This story was never exclusively about money. It was about what happens when you serve as the invisible scaffolding for everyone else's well-being, and what it takes to step out of that role without erasing yourself in the process. People will often tell you that family is everything. That loyalty means staying. That strength means enduring. But they rarely tell you the other side of that truth. That devotion can be used as a weapon. That prolonged endurance becomes self-erasure. And that real strength is knowing when to put a heavy burden down. Not dramatically, not loudly, not in a way that demands attention, but by taking a firm, quiet step to the side. So grounded that it doesn't require an explanation anymore. I didn't lose my family that day. I lost the version of myself that believed I had to earn the right to exist by saving everyone around me. And in her place, a different woman was born. One who doesn't wait to be considered. One who doesn't mistake submission for peace. One who understands that being the strong one is not a lifelong obligation. It is a choice, and the moment it stops being respected, it's a choice you are fully allowed to take back. So if you are reading this right now, and you continue to quietly, consistently carry the weight of other people's choices without a shred of appreciation, ask yourself one question, not how much more can I handle, but why am I the one expected to handle it? Because a completely honest answer to that question might just be the beginning of your own freedom.